from the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. And today, again, a very nice episode where I don't have only one guest, but I have two guests and very special guests, both co-founders of Callings.ai. So I have Garrett Rice, I have Philippe Cailloux. Garrett and Philippe, thank you very much for being here with me today. I really appreciate it. It's very early morning at the time of this recording. It's 6 a.m. on the West Coast in the US. So thank you for making it. So the first thing I like to do is I like my guests to introduce themselves, tell us a little more about your backgrounds, your journey, and what you're currently up to. And then we start the discussion from there. As the audience would guess, we're going to talk about AI for a special use case. But Garrett, I would love to start with you. So, a quick introduction, and then we go to Philip, and then we can kick it from there.
Thanks, Mehmet. I'm Garrett Rice. I've been in Silicon Valley for a while. I have about 20 some years experience at Apple. Worked at the Steve Jobs' previous company, Next. Early in my career, a couple small startups, and most recently working with Philippe at Callings.ai to revolutionize how job seekers use AI to help them find a job. And we're excited to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Garrett. Philip, I will pass it to you.
Yeah, thank you for having us. My name is Philippe Cailloux. I have been in the tech space for many years. When I was a little kid, I grew up in a fisherman's village in the south of France, and I was obsessed with actually science and technology. It was a bit strange looking back. And one thing that struck me back then was I was not okay that engineers were actually the one putting products on the market. And I don't know why I was thinking that. And that led me to through a career in product design in technology. So back then in the 80s, late 80s, design was not an official role in creating products, technical, digital, software-based products. So I pretty much had to invent the discipline. Created a European master through 3 universities to think and develop the future of product design in software. And after that, it's been moved to the US about 30 years ago. And this is my 7th startup, tech startup. And in between, I was the head of product design for Adobe, and then the head of product design for Roxio. So recently, I met Garrett, and we decided to start Callings.ai to change the way we define recruitment and how people find jobs.
Great. Thank you, Philip, for this introduction. And, I'm very honored to have both of you. So both of you are veterans in the tech and startup worlds. It's maybe kind of a traditional question, right? So every company has a story behind it, right? So you mentioned about a little bit what you do with Callings.ai, but there must be some, reason or like maybe a moment where both of you decided like, okay, like hold on one second, there's something really broken and someone didn't fix it yet, and now the time came for us to build this. I always, curious to learn about these moments. So I'm not sure, like Garrett, maybe you can start, and then Philip can add his part.
Sure. I met Philippe. We were both working with a career coach to figure out what to do next. I think I'm not totally certain of Philippe's story on it, but it was one of the first times in my life that I'd really started to look for a job. Before that, I'd been in the Apple, sort of ecosystem or satellite orbit, and I had just always taken the next role there. But for the first time, I wanted to go and really look. Um, and I met Philippe during that time. We were both keenly interested in getting involved in AI. This was the early days of AI. This current chapter of AI with large language models. And, and I think we were both just aghast at how horrible the experience is for people looking for a job. None of the tools to our eyes were really designed for the people looking. And Philippe, being the creative product builder that he is, was already building products to help himself in his job hunt. And they were impressive. I remember him showing me those and me saying to him, these are really great. I would pay for these, Philippe. And he continued to work on them, and I continued to encourage him. And there's a point where, I was so impressed that I wanted to work with him to make those products available to a broader audience. And so that's my memory of how we teamed up. Philippe maybe has a different view, but
Yeah, Philip, I would love to hear from your side.
No, I think that's pretty fair representation. What happened for myself, same as for Garrett. I have never put myself in the mindset of having to look for a job or directly looking for a job. I've always been hired out of a company, or as a startup would be moving to its next chapter, I would exit and immediately being in motion with some other people, thinking about the next interesting opportunity. And in this case, I was interested in looking at maybe getting back into the corporate world, like a large local company here in the Silicon Valley. And for that, I knew I needed to get ready, and I got a lot of support and coaching. As Garrett mentioned, that's how we met. But I could not really stand the notion of the process and being, I would even call that, a victim of the process. Applying to jobs, reaching out, not getting any responses, knowing that some of the jobs I was applying to, I believe, qualified for, at least I had pretty good idea how to deliver and achieve the results or the objectives that were expected by the employers. And that lasted for a few months. And we were a group of job seekers and former executives and people with some experience and some stuff to actually contribute to the economy and to the market. And everyone was sharing the same experience. And I was wondering, this is something that is not working right here. It is not okay that this person with so much background and experience is being what is called ghosted, or is being ignored, or is being put in a miserable mental state of despair, and people starting to reconsider everything they have done and their value. And that became, to me, a more interesting topic to look into. Everything that I could automate, started to automate it I just started with a spreadsheet and a Google sheet and was just tracking my progress, my interactions with the companies, the interviews, and all that. And I was doing AI before already, and I was very excited. Uh, like always, for me, new technology is about thinking what are the new products that we could invent to move the ball forward. And as Garrett said, these tools became very helpful for different reasons. And different people in the group were starting to ask me to share if I could share the tools for them. They could use it. I decided to be more serious about the development of the tools. And Garrett really helped with the motivation and the. I always needed someone, a partner of some sort that allows to have a broader vision, especially the business vision, the marketing vision, and building a company. I build product. I think Garrett has been helping. We merge like a cell, and he's really helping making these ideas as a business.
So it's an old problem, I think, Philip, and Garrett, also what you mentioned. I think a lot of the people who would be listening or watching this, me included, by the way, they would relate to the challenges we face when we are on the job hunt. So to me, every single job portal, it put in mind, the employer, not the future employee. And because they have designed in a very robotic way, that you need to do this customization, the ATS systems, and everything else. So if I want, so we know now the problem. We know, like, of course, the ICP, let's call it. So everyone who's hunting, a job. Now, I'm interested to know, like, Philip, you just mentioned you started with a couple of tools, and then you started to put this into a form of product. So if you can break for us down, the journey that me as a job hunter, using your solution, that I would pass through. So because if I go to the traditional approach, so I would be going to maybe LinkedIn. I would maybe go, if you are in the US and North America, to Indeed. Like here in the Middle East, we have like a couple of other portals, but it's all the same experience. So what would be my experience if I come to Callings.ai?
I'll let Garrett take that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the fundamental challenges that we immediately saw is that the sites that many people go to find a job. I mean, just for starters, they say to you, create a profile so that we can help find you a job. And you just uploaded your resume to them, and yet they ask you to copy and paste all the same information into web forms to get you started. And that was one of the very earliest things where we were just startled that with modern technology that they didn't read your resume. And I think this highlights what a lot of job boards are about, which is that they get paid by the job posting companies, and so everything is around inputting data for the job seeker so that the hiring companies and recruiters can process it. That doesn't necessarily help you get a job if you're a job seeker. And for the job seeker, it's all about a workflow, right? Especially in what we call the modern job hunt. The modern job hunt requires that you apply to a lot of opportunities to get considered for any of them. And so we took a hard look at that, and Philippe built a platform where the various steps that you're required to undertake to apply to any job, we take care of for you, and we manage all in one place. So, I mean, there's many aspects of the job hunt that not many people had tackled. So I mentioned onboarding. Another one is simply tracking of the job hunt process. Almost everybody that we talk to, even today, unless they come to our platform, they built their own spreadsheet to manage their job hunt. And that's kind of crazy, right? But it comes from the standpoint that most of the job hunting platforms are about posting jobs and getting paid to post jobs rather than helping the person looking for a job. And the requirements are different. And so that's we went down that path with Callings.ai. And then for each of the steps, and there are many that a job seeker needs to take, we used technologies, existing technologies, and then new AI technologies to try and accelerate each of the steps and make it more logical and transparent for the job seeker. That includes things like customizing resumes and cover letters. Mehmet, you mentioned that, you pointed that out, right? Which, when you're applying for a job today, your resume is not read by a human being. Almost 75, 80% of the time it's read by an ATS or applicant tracking system. And this is part of the HR system for the hiring company. And they import your resumes from hundreds of people applying. And then they use, in many cases, not even AI, but just keyword-based searching to review the submitted resumes and determine whether you're qualified for the job. And as a result, a lot of qualified people are being rejected because their resume doesn't reflect the language and terminology that the hiring company requires. And so these are all problems facing the job seeker that really are not important to a company selling job posts. And but they're important to us because we're focused on the job seeker side of the equation. And so, these are some of the things that we have tackled in building a total job hunt platform focused on managing the entire job hunt workflow that somebody needs to undertake. And I think that's what makes us unique. And it gives us our purpose, for our raison d'etre, or forgive me, Philippe, for trying to use a French phrase, and I don't speak French, but that's our reason for being. Is we want to balance the playing field for job seekers in an era where increasingly technology is making them just a one blade of grass in a very large field. We want them to stand out. We want to help them tell their story, because when people actually can convey who they really are and what benefits they are, that's when they get the job.
Philip, like from your perspective, again, and you needed to design this as a product. Of course, you said like you started with tools and Google Sheets, so you need to put it into a product. And I think what you did, I mean, both of you, is kind of you broke the rule, or like you inverted the equation, because to what you explained, and everyone knows it, like people design these systems putting the employers in mind. You did everything on the opposite side. So from product perspective and technology perspective, like what are like main things you said, like, okay, these are the main features we need to focus on first, so we have like better onboarding for the job seekers, and of course better experience in getting the job hunted and landing that offer.
Yes, I think for me, what started was initially a workflow optimization approach. And there's one element we have not discussed yet, is the coach that Garrett and I were working with was very instrumental into this project. And as a matter of fact, Horst Govin, his name is, joined us as a third co-founder. And I mention this not only because he's a great coach and a great human being, but it's also his approach was for us an insight into the fact that it can be about us as candidates. The process can be about elevating people. As you and Garrett mentioned, is historically the process being really from the demand. The weight has been on the demand side of the equation from the hiring companies. That's where the money is coming historically, and that's what drove the process. So when I started first was, okay, how do I automate the different tasks that the coach is suggesting, the approach that we take. And I don't want to get into the details of the method, but there's a methodology that this coach is using. It's very comprehensive. It's very broad. It takes different angles, different multiple strategies to get the highest chance. But also this coach has something that is very important, was very important to Garrett and I, was the approach is it's about yourself. It's about you. It's about being clear about what you bring to the table. Who are you as a person? What excites you? What do you want? What do you need? And it's historically a little bit counterintuitive, where we see still today some of the response from the market being it's a number game, and you should spray and pray, applying to thousands and thousands of jobs, and maybe you have a chance that one or two will be responding. I did help during my career many friends looking for a job. And there's always there's two examples where someone would say, I'm so desperate. No, I would ask, no, what are you looking for? What do you want as a job? And the person would say, I'm so desperate right now. I would take any jobs. And it's always been for me a concerning situation that someone is ready to get any job. It doesn't work, and the person is not getting absolutely any jobs. But what I've seen are the people who are very in tune with what they want to do, which manifests itself through a passion. Usually, you would talk to someone, that person is actually, as a matter of fact, is not looking for a job, or is not looking for a job for very long. This is someone who has a passion for. I was listening to some of your podcasts, right? You hear the passion in the people. That they have something that excites them, and they want to do something. They want to change something. They want to contribute in a unique way, and these are the people who are getting jobs. So that did resonate. The approach from the coach plus this personal experience resonated with the fact that there's something beyond the workflow optimization. There's a way we can flip around the mechanism and help people being more uh, aware of their interests and their passion, which is usually very, very difficult at the time where you lost a job, because fear is immediately taking over, right? The fear of not finding a job, the fear of not having money to pay for the bills. There's a social stigma still about not having a full-time job. So I think we have, with Callings.ai, we have an opportunity to create a platform where we at the same time match the existing legacy process from companies trying to recruit people, at the same time empowering the candidate in a way that the candidate is more powerful. And the definition for that is a candidate that knows about what he or she wants to do, or who he or she is. And we believe that is creating a more healthy ecosystem.
Right. Now, I know that we talked about this, but I'm too much, sometimes I repeated on the show a couple of times. So anything which for me becomes at some point non-logical anymore, I start to have a rant against it, right? So CV or resume, as they call it, is one of these. And Garrett, you just mentioned, like, how come we can put, all experience that we have in just like maybe 2 page, 3 pages, right? And then you give it to a system, not a human, to read it. Now, I know, like, one of the things which when I was checking the website, you write like the first step is know yourself. I'm interested to know, is it like the AI that tries to ask questions and get to know this person? So now the model will tell me, hey, Mehmet, like we see you work, for example, as a technologist, and then you work as a sales, for startups. So maybe this is the kind of jobs that you want to do. Because, and to the point of Philip mentioned about spray and pray, so sometimes even people, and I've heard a lot from a lot of recruiters as well. So, for example, the job is, let's say, um, database administrator, right? And they start to see someone not related to tech applying to the job. So, like, how much this is real problem between the CV slash resume, whatever you want to call it, versus also us knowing what do we want, like. And I'm interested to know from technology perspective what you have built, how this would help me as a candidate to understand really, which direction I should be heading.
Yeah. Well, and I would say for us, stay tuned. Philippe is working on some stuff right now, which we think, is going to fundamentally change the dynamic that you're describing. And so I don't want to go into, too much into things that we don't have shipping yet for users, but I will point out that even today we have a very powerful tool on our platform, which is experimental tool called My Insights. And we know a lot by reading somebody's resume. It's not that the resume doesn't have important information. It's a narrative of your past achievements and accomplishments, and somewhat a list of the things that you have skills with, all of which are very important. The problem is that does not encompass either the person that you are or the value that you provide. It's simply a list that says, I've done this. And, the limitation in evaluating somebody based on their resume is it doesn't suggest well what they'll do in the future job, or how they'll react in a situation that is not defined yet. And then, of course, the resume does not capture who they are at all. The type of personality they have, as Philippe mentioned earlier, what type of passion they have, what they might do. And this is why a lot of times recruiters and hiring companies will find somebody with the perfect resume and background, and they'll come into the company and they won't do anything successful for the company. It's because they match up with the job description, but not with what the real need of the company is. And so our My Insights technology inside of Callings.ai takes the base resume, and Philippe has built in a process, he likes to call it the Socratic method, of saying, okay, well, you've done all of these things. Why is this important? What is it you're trying to get out of these situations, for you? And by going through a fairly detailed question and answer session, Philippe then can provide in our platform the ideal job description that the people are looking for. And I'm continually surprised. There are certainly people out there that know what they want and know how they're going to get it. But experience in working with job seekers for the last couple of years, I think has taught us that for many people, when they're in the job hunt, it's one of the worst moments in their life. And it hits at every one of their insecurities about their capabilities and who they are as a they're on the outside trying to scrape their way back in. And so it's hard for them to identify where they want to go, and what value they provide, because if for example you've been laid off, it tells you, hey, the company that I used to work with doesn't have any value. It doesn't think I have any value. It doesn't think I'm important. And then you apply to 100 jobs and nobody responds, and that plays into it as well. And so, that rejection gets you to forget what you're great at, what your skills are. And, the My Insights tab goes through and just asks simple questions. Why is this a passion for you? Why are you interested in this? Why is this on your resume? What things aren't on your resume? And by going through and answering those questions, we can generate an ideal job report, which is kind of a snapshot of what based on their answers, something would be great for them to have as their next job, which is a good template when you're going out and looking, because then you can compare that against the opportunities that actually exist. We also go through and provide detailed branding information for them. How, what's a good way to convey your value proposition in 30 seconds and in 2 minutes? What's your elevator pitch? And these are the types of things that go under that rubric of know thyself. And we think we can really help people with that by sussing out and helping draw out the information that is there, which they may not be able to see at that moment based on their situation.
Cool. Philippe, do you want to add something on this? And you know what? I'm interested from technology perspective also. Like before we started the recording, you were telling me about the AI and the LLMs and, you know, um, the secret sauce. Of course, you don't have to give it to us here, but I mean, um, a little bit on the tech aspects of what Garrett just mentioned.
Yes. So, well, I think 2 years after the official launch of ChatGPT, I think we are all clear now that AI is a tool. AI is actually a technology, and technologies are what is a technology? Technology to me is a layer that is on top of the science, right? So you start with nature, and you have scientists looking into the nature, and the scientists create technologies. The scientists create science, and when certain science become more mature, you have this next stack of technologists look into the science, and they create new technologies. What and AI, LLMs, and all technologies that have been created since for the past 2 or 3 million years, they then get into a layer of applications. Technologies are not directly used most of the time. This is where I position myself as a productist, which is this transformation or applying the technology layer into a product layer. The way I look at it is, lots of traditional approach is we start from the human standpoint. We start from the users. We try to invent the needs, or we try to understand pain points, and that's the traditional product development approach. My career has always been at the more intersection of the technology and the users, and the in-between results being the product. But I've always been very influenced by transforming a new technology into a new product that enables something that is relevant at the time where it's happening, the time and the place where it's happening. In the case of what Garrett is mentioning, and how the technology and AI helps, there's an intersection of technology and user needs today, and this intersection for me is critical in the creation of the product. But the intersection is there's a shift in the user needs on how to get a job, and there's a shift in the fundamental new layer of technology, which is AI. So how does it go? So in the example that Garrett mentioned, we are talking about the fact that focusing on someone to express who you are is what I would call personal branding. So when you look at personal brand as a theme that becomes a need in the transformation of the society today, that is what I would put on the side of the need of the users. On the AI side, it is the understanding of what commercially available components offer. what is the most obvious one today is the LLM, but it's also everything that is touching semantic matching, semantic search, the vector database. It's also I think that's pretty much it. Everything else that you can imagine from the MCPs, the agents, everything else to me is nothing more than just selling more LLMs, better LLM applications, or simplifying the deployment, the time to market, and the deployments of LLMs. How do we connect now? How do we use the AI? And how do we enable personal branding? And I'm not going to give any secret sauce here. I'm just stay at a high level. Well, one way to look at it is what's been happening in the field for the past 100 years, and what are the non-technical ways of developing a personal brand. So that's one example. And what's great with an LLM is that in traditional product development we've been doing for many years is we would be sitting down and say, how do I develop an application that is, for example, a personal brand coach? Right? What is a personal brand coach doing? And I would go and do a deep domain analysis, interviewing many professionals and experts in the domain. I would read many books. I would get as deep as I can in the understanding of the discipline or understanding of the domain. And that's where LLM today is fantastic. Right? I don't need anymore to do the same level, or it's a different approach, but I don't need anymore to do the deep dive into absorbing a domain expertise and then creating a product framework around that. I still need to understand the principles and the mechanisms that enable the development of a personal brand in this example. But I know that once I figure out what is the recipe for that, then the execution of it through, call it prompt engineering, I think it's the word that is the closest to it. I'd rather call that myself prompt design. But it's the architecture, the designing the architecture of the product is using an LLM, is how to replace domain expertise and some of the logic that creates the product response and the product interaction with the user. So in terms of product development, that's an acceleration, definitely. And it is also an increase in the quality. So I think the product that we are developing today could have been developed in the past. I can totally imagine how. It would have been taking much longer, much larger team, and it would have been also much more monolithic and difficult to modify and adapt. We can very easily today shift toward, we've been talking about the match.com, where you match a person with another person with a match.com. Here we would be matching a candidate and a company. Those would be a different concept or a different mechanism, which you would have also a discipline for that. And the LLM, the very same LLM, would already be waiting for you to express and unveil and unwrap the potential by again combining prompts and the product layer. So we do have a lot of product development on top of the LLM. When I started, it was definitely a wrapper. It was actually a Google Sheet using JavaScript, interfacing directly with the very first APIs from OpenAI. But today, I would say that easily 90% of the product is not LLM. We use the LLM only for 10% of the lines. in terms of code, number of lines in the code, it's less than 10%, probably even 5. But the power of it is definitely maybe reversed. It's 90% still the power is coming from the LLM.
Cool. Now, one thing, because you mentioned AI, we mentioned also, both of you mentioned that the change that is happening within, the type of jobs that we're doing, right? So how much, you believe, Callings.ai can help job seekers to stay relevant to the dream job that they have. So maybe I'm a software engineer, right? And I want to land a job at one of the big companies. But what we are seeing, let's say now, that's a debatable topic we can talk about maybe later. But they're saying like, hey, like some parts of a software engineer task will be automated by AI. So you need to be maybe more into the Q&A, or maybe you want to be more. So how AI would help someone like me who's like into software engineering to tailor his career path also as well, instead of going and applying to what might become an obsolete job in a couple of years?
That's a great question. Were you aiming that at Philippe or me?
Any one of you. It's for both.
I don't know, Philippe. I mean, I could take a first stab at it. Philippe has talked a lot about this, and I love his way of holding it. He describes it that this is just the latest tool set. And history has shown over and over and over again that as technology changes, whether it's fire or the wheel or any technology, that that either you're a person that adopts that technology and understands how to use it and apply it, or you're less competitive. And my experience so far running an AI startup with Philippe and working with a lot of people as we do that, is that the core wisdom of building a company or building a product or undertaking a marketing program, it can be described by large language models, but it cannot be applied except by a human being. And so in our case, we're simply using that tool to be more productive and effective. And so the example that you give of the engineer, if they don't use AI, they are not going to be a competitive engineer going forward, I don't think. But if they have a long history of being an engineer and along comes Copilot and some of these other tools that are engineering focused around large language models and AI, they're simply going to be able to do their job much more effectively and more quickly, right? If you're in marketing, for example, one of the jobs of marketing, and I did this in my career a lot, is you'd sit around in front of a whiteboard to come up with slogans and taglines and messaging and try and boil down the product that you're selling to articulate it well. That task must still be done, but it can be done more quickly using large language models, because you can continually add to the prompts on what you're investigating there, and it'll give you opportunities, give you options. The wisdom is in picking the right ones or continuing to prompt down certain paths to get to the truth of the matter. And at least so far, it seems to me that the LLMs and AI does not have that wisdom, right? It requires somebody with experience in the real world. In the Emerald podcast, if you're a fan of that, does a great job of talking about this, right? There's something really valuable about actually existing in the real world and applying things in a real world. And that's what a human being can do, right? Large language model cannot smell a flower. It can describe how a flower smells based on how people have reported it, but it itself cannot smell a flower. And so, I think, and I'm rambling a little bit, but I think for me, I have not found that the skills that I've learned in my career have changed because AI has arrived. I found that I can more quickly apply the experience and knowledge that I have using AI, and I can use it as a tool to accelerate what I'm doing. And I'd like to think that that's where we're going, is that, it indeed, as Philippe describes it, it's a tool, and and the intelligent people will use it. If you can go hunting by throwing a stick, you're effective. If you can go hunting by using an atlatl or a bow and arrow, you're more effective. But the hunting part, you still have to do.
Right. Philippe, anything you want to add?
A little bit. Yeah, absolutely. I think Garrett is got a gist of it. And Garrett mentioned the hunter on the stick. The stick is not making you a hunter. The stick is making a hunter a better hunter. Right. So from the past 2 or 3, again, I'm going to take this history of mankind for the past 2 or 3 million years. The technology or the tools using technology or the latest technologies have never replaced the human. Now it's a standard, it's just a model, right? There's some people have different models, different frameworks. My framework is that the technology or the tools built on top of the new technologies never replaced the human. It's the human using these tools who replace humans, right? So, and then I'm going to go deeper on that, because then it becomes political, it becomes religious, it becomes whatever conversations. That's the only next step possible after you declare this framework. So the angle I'm taking is that it's actually the one that, if you remember, I don't know if you have seen in Dubai, but there was in the Super Bowl 2024, so not last Super Bowl, but the one the year before. Microsoft had a fantastic, what I found was a fantastic commercial. It was very Apple in its approach and style, and the commercial was portraying a diverse group of people, young, older people, and they were just plain people, but they were people with an intention. There were people saying, in the commercial, they were saying, they told me I will never be able to write this book. They told me I will never have this movie. They told me I will never blah, blah, blah. And then there's this pause in the middle of the commercial, where the woman say, watch me. And then the second part of the commercial is the same characters introduced at the beginning of the commercial, but each of them now are fully into the development and the implementation of their ideas. And at the very end, there's a little kind of Microsoft Copilot or something. It was Microsoft saying, this is what AI is about. AI is not going to enable people suddenly to become hunters or to become entrepreneurs or to become an accountant or a surgeon. But if you have an intention, if you have an idea, if you have a wish, this kind of technologies will enable the kind of tools that will accelerate or make available the results or the vision, execute the vision that you have. So, Mehmet, you asked, what does it mean for me as an engineer, software engineer, for example? How can Callings can help you understand understand the situation that's going on out there? One of the proposals that we have is AI excels at the execution, as in the Microsoft commercial. It excels at executing what? It excels at executing an intention. And this intention needs to be articulated. So if if anyone can position themselves in a situation where they can articulate an intention, and I'm not just saying, well, in the intention you put in the prompt and it gives you a result, right? AI is going to infiltrate many tools, many things that we use every day. That is what I'm talking about, is this level of personal intention. What does that mean, having a personal intention? It means nurturing creative thinking, nurturing strategic thinking, and probably nurturing critical thinking. Each of them requires an understanding of a domain. So when the artist has a wish, or when as a software engineer, if I can imagine that I want to develop a financial tool, then you need to understand finance a little bit. You also need to have an idea and what is driving you for that. Did you see something? And the critical thinking is, as you go and build something, as a software engineer, start building a result, is how do you judge that what is being built, what you build, is worthy of adoption by the rest of the society? So as we move forward, everyone in the society, every worker will have, in order to survive, will have to step back or step up one notch from the implementation stack of the industry. If you are being paid to execute something today, you need to move to the level up, to the person who was asking you and had the critical thinking and the creative thinking and the strategic thinking, because that layer now is being eaten up by the AI. So everyone can just look at moving up to the chain, but not necessarily the chain of command, right? It's the chain of creativity, the chain of thinking globally. So what we can help with that in Callings.ai, and especially in what Garrett was alluding to, is how do we help people to brand yourself with these elements, in a little bit, focusing a little bit more on that than your execution skills, because your execution skills are becoming commodities, and a senior software engineers who is highly paid today is replaced, plain and simple. If you are an extremely senior software developer and what you do is to code what a product manager has been suggesting we should be coding, you just don't have a job anymore. It's plain and simple. So that is touching not only software engineers, but every single professional, and it's worldwide, and that we will need a global support for people to redefine themselves, understand their value, and project that value.
This is very, I would say thought provoking for me. While you're talking, I start, really to think about some scenarios from my past, something that people share with me sometimes. Now, maybe it's not related directly to Callings.ai, but so some big figures in tech, they talk about how they envision, or maybe let's say their expectations about the future of work. So we know, for example, Reid Hoffman, who talks about like the 9 to 5 jobs, they'll not exist maybe in the future. Sam Altman from OpenAI talks about the single man company, right? So um are these like big ambitions from people in technology who are just throwing their thoughts? Is it partially, something that we might see in the future? And so both of you have this long experience in tech, and but I like, Garrett, what you mentioned, like if you have the skills, you're gonna survive, right? So you build these skills during your life experience and career experience, and then whenever you go to somewhere else, you're ready to go. But when these leaders in technology speak this way, so me as a job seeker today, like, there must be something that maybe I would ignore it today, but maybe after 1 month, 6 months, 1 year, some realities would start. Are what I want to mention, what they are saying, is this something just as a thought that they are throwing, or maybe really we are reaching what they are talking about?
How to interpret what they mean? I mean, there's definitely a transformation going on. There's no doubt about that. Um, and it's been happening even before, the current push with large language models, right?
Mhm.
You see the rise of Upwork and gig economies and all of that. I think, generally it used to be that you needed infrastructure to do anything. And so that's where companies came in, and you had to be part of a larger team to do a lot of things. And as technology empowers people individually more, I think, those walls are breaking down. And, that's probably what Sam Altman means when he talks about the one person company. You can manage more and more of the functions of what historically was a large company, with a smaller team because of technology. It can pick up those pieces, and obviously AI is going to accelerate that dramatically. We're seeing that ourselves, right? We're, Callings.ai, we're making progress, with Philippe's modern approach to development, using tools like you're describing to do development that, used to be a much larger team of people, and all the dynamics that come with that. So, I mean, I think that's inevitable. It's already happened. And the question is, how does it flow through society and the economy over the coming decades, and what will that impact be? Um, these transitions have happened throughout history, right? I think I read somewhere that in 1880, 80% of all the people in the world were on the farms, and by 1920, that number had dropped to 20%. And today, I think that number is like 2% or something like that. And so, you know, there wasn't a collapse, there wasn't a whole bunch of unhappy farmers, standing on the side of the road. For some people, they did, and you look at during the Great Depression, the people during the Dust Bowl and those types of things, they were displaced and severely affected. But overall, that transition went by fairly very quietly, and people moved to wearing ties and suits and going to work, instead of having to dig up alfalfa every day. And but that dynamic itself is changing, right? Because now there aren't large companies that you line up to go into, and increasingly, companies are smaller to have the same impact. And I think that trend is going to continue. It seems like the problem is that the job seekers and the people in that transition need help to make that transition, and they need an understanding of the situation. And a lot of people don't, right? So, we're on this podcast. Philippe and I made the commitment years ago, which is, part of where we bonded, that clearly AI was going to be a technology that was going to revolutionize things and change things. And so, we invested time and effort in getting involved in it and understanding it, and then eventually built a company based on it. But a lot of people have not stepped into that power curve yet to work on how this change is going to affect them. And that's going to be the transition and the pain point. And we're seeing it, right? There's even though the unemployment figures seem low, when we talk to people, we don't get that same impression. They talk about the white collar recession and the fact that, the more senior and more experienced and more high priced you are, the more difficult it is for you to get your next role, because, this game of musical chairs, there's less chairs, for those types of opportunities, unless you can bring something really powerful to the equation. And so I think that shift is happening right now. And, and I think the job market will be fundamentally different in 10 years than it is now in every way. In many ways, the same way that it's fundamentally different now than it was even 6 years ago. And you look at the impact of just Zoom, right? I mean, historically, up until 6 or 7 years ago, we would have had to fly to a studio somewhere to sit down with you to do this recording. Now, we're
It's the norm.
we're all over the world, and yet we're meeting and working, and that's fundamentally changed how businesses work. I think it's going to have an impact on commercial real estate, because people aren't going to aggregate in big office buildings anymore to do their work. I mean, they just aren't. They're signing in on Zoom. Even the biggest companies that have the most influence on getting everybody gathered together are forced with a continued battle to get people to show up to the office. And that's
True.
just one small change among many that we're talking about. And so how this plays out individually, it's going to be very personal for people, in the same way that if you were an expert at driving a wagon in 1903, by 1910, either you would learn how to drive a car, or you're going to be in serious trouble, because there just weren't going to be many wagons pulled by horses anymore. And and that's the transition we're in. And and for somebody who's an expert wagon driver with amazing skills, that's going to be very painful. That was a very painful process. And I guess that the more traditional metaphor is the buggy whip maker, but anyways.
Makes sense, 100%. And just before I, take the word from Philippe, to what you mentioned, I think I listened on a radio show when I was driving the other day, and here it's the same thing. Like, I think 60% of the people who are in the job, they are hunting their next, job, and they are not like even 1 year over there. And like this, I think people are seeking, this kind of um not peace of mind, I would say, but they're looking for the place where they can be challenged in the positive way to get the best out of them. And it's not only about, the salary, or, the position or the title. It's about, are they doing what they are mostly passionate about? So I think this is what also you mentioned and Philippe mentioned multiple times about this, purpose driven approach. And Philippe, also you mentioned about, the branding, and I've been personally telling people, yeah, you need the CV, you need everything, but you need to work on your branding. Like, I don't know how, but you need to establish for yourself something where you go tell people, hey, like, this is me. It's not like only the words on 2 pages of a Word document or PDF document. So sorry, Philip, I took a little bit from your time, but to the question I was asking Garrett, what's your take about
Yeah,
what we
yeah.
just discussed?
I have a few points here. I think your initial question was, do we agree, or do we believe that things like what Reed or Sam Altman are talking about, and is the next one person unicorn company in the making right now, and is that even possible? And we have not seen it yet, but is this in the making? And I'm going to say a few things about that. But you also just reacted and mentioned about the notion of purpose driven.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to bring some positive cynicism here. Let's not fool ourselves. We, as human beings, we are and again, maybe that's just a statement and a personal point of view. We are still highly driven by fundamental domination and survival mechanisms at the DNA level. We can raise as much awareness as we can, and we can be fully aware that we are driven by domination and survival. But at the end of the day, both of you, Mehmet and Garrett, you've been using the word job hunting. What is the hunting? I mean, think just about it, right? Hunting. And yes, survival is being redefined. Domination is being redefined. And one of the redefinition right now is brand yourself, be yourself, define yourself, be powerful is, in my little framework, is very much aligned with the notion of domination and survival. And that's what we see also when, Garrett, you mentioned the migration from farming to factories and factories to desk jobs. People don't disappear. So people move, and if they are not disappearing, they are surviving. Some are highly driven or more driven by the notion of dominating as a mechanism to exist, and some are more in the mechanism of surviving. But we all still exist. Will we see a massive move out of the factories? Absolutely, certainly. It's happening. It's been happening for the past even 40 years, 50 years. Smart robotics is very clearly in motion. So factory workers paid to execute a task. There are going to be some thinking around survival to happen there. So we can help. So now, okay, can someone start a company and become a unicorn today? I'm not certain about that. I'm not certain. I tried. It doesn't work. I tried. I was highly impressed with the fact that I was able to develop a product that would have taken probably 5 or 6 developers with just myself at the beginning. That was that was crazy. I mean, just in 5 years ago, I've always been working with large teams, between 5 and 500 people. But then I thought, okay, great. So I'm going to build a company. But when I sat down with ChatGPT as I'm going to do the marketing, I just don't even, I didn't know even what question to start with. And I could have said, look, I don't know anything. I'm a beginner in marketing. This is what I'm thinking about the product. Help me out. Okay, I could think, if you can think about this level of abstraction but then the problem is when you get some of the answers and the solutions. I was looking at it and said, I have no idea. I have no idea what is this real good or not good, and should I actually invest in doing what is being suggested? I was missing the domain expertise to execute my critical thinking on this thing. I could not. Now, when it came to the product development of the software, there was absolutely no question in my mind that I was very clear about what I wanted, and I knew how to articulate it because I've been writing specs for 30 years and working with engineers for 30 years. I know the details. I know the pitfalls. I know all the little variations. It's been always the same. And when I'm getting a response from the LLM, it's very, very fast and quick for me to look at it and say, no, hold on, I didn't express it the right way. Let me re-express it. Or I can very quickly say, this is not what I asked for, right? And eventually at one point I can say, this is good enough to move on. That is what I call the critical thinking in this new logic where execution is being done. But there's by something else. There's nothing new. When you work with a team, when you collaborate with different people, there's a whole combination of task assignment and discussions, and we all agree we articulate the goals and the intentions, we agree, we move on. We all build and share a common domain, an agreement around the domain and knowledge. And as people start to execute and you build something or you move forward on something, there's an agreement also on yes, this is good, this is not good, we should move, we're good, we need to reiterate or not. That dynamic, I'm still not clear how autonomous a human being will be okay to let go of this autonomy, because if this autonomy is actually slightly even starting to take over, the human being will stop it because of the need of survival and domination. Human beings have never let anything, anyone, any living thing, any ideas, any technologies dominate and take over. Now, we have always developed that to take over other people, but there's always a one point where the human being is not going to let themselves being dominated or executed. That is if we agree on the principle that we have a deep survival built-in mechanism. So when people talk about AGI, for example, I'll say AGI, go for it, but AGI is going to be used by people to increase their domination and survival skills. So yes, we can use AI today to create a one-person company, but that one person already needs to have a good understanding of the domain, a broad understanding ranging from technology to marketing to legal to financial to biz dev for all the components. And if that person is capable of doing that, okay, so that is a Reid Hoffman sitting down with an AI and say, I'm going to build my next company and it's going to be a unicorn. It's possible. But it's possible because Reid Hoffman has already developed a personal brand. And people will be flocking around and they will want him to survive because it will help other people to survive. So the answer, I think, in my take is yes and no. And it's things are going to be transformation. There's no question about it, and it's going to happen quickly, and it's going to be brutal for many people. There's no doubt.
Right. I think what people mix things up, especially when and the reason I didn't say like unicorn, single person unicorn, because people they think it's only about the value. Yeah, like I can. We saw like these vibe coders, and we saw like some of these what they call the indie hackers, or what they call them, the people who keep moving. Yeah, you can. Actually, yes. I've met.
No, I'm going to stop you there. Sorry, I should not interrupt you. I'm sorry about that. Remember the camcorders? When the camcorders came in, the social conversation was about the fact that Hollywood was dead.
Yeah.
Because now everyone had access to the means to produce any movies. And it was actually a strong belief in the society where people say, we're going to see, like, we don't need any more Hollywood. Everyone's going to make the movie. It's going to be great, right? But look, let's be reasonable here. And in vibe coding, there's way more to it than vibe coding. The first question is, what do you code? What do you code? That's creative thinking. Creative thinking is never going to come from even AGI. So creative thinking is back to the commercial for Microsoft. So vibe coding is great if you have an idea and you want to do it. I've been doing it. It was not called vibe coding. I did it like 3 years ago. Okay, great, right? Because to me, it was the most obvious thing is, can I get rid out of the engineer, the software developer, and can I do it myself? So yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, you mentioned vibe coding. I think it's right on. You're absolutely, that's my strong belief in that. Yes.
Yeah. So 100%. No, and sorry for, not meant.
No, so I'm sorry.
This before. Yeah, no, it's okay. So, but my point was like, to your point, so I'm agreeing with you, Philippe, is that, and to Garrett's point also as well. Yeah, I mean, I can create income for myself doing vibe coding, whatever, right? But to me, a successful company, a company that stays for generation, right? It's not like I do like a hit and run, right? So it's not like this. It's like how I build, a long lasting company, and to build a long company. So look at you, for example, Philippe and Garrett, like you are together, like you brainstorm this together, you build a team to build all this. So, and to me, yeah, people like mix two things. Uh, the value from money perspective and the value from the impact that you want to leave, like as we say, like I love this term, which is leaving your dent in the universe, right? So yeah, so you can do this, or you can, yeah, become a super millionaire and then you go and stay in Hawaii, I don't know where. And just one more thing that I want to say about the survival thing. I like this, Philippe, like this, philosophical approach. We call it job hunting. They call it also, don't forget, head hunting. And I was joking with
Yeah.
I was hunting with a guy. I said, "Hey, like, do you do like the cowboys? Like, you just you're hunting a head." Uh, and it's about, but you're right. It's about survival. I think this is. Um, and Garrett, you mentioned at the beginning, like we connect things which are somehow connected, but when it's about our survival, it's about paying the bills. Yes, we have to go hunting, and that actually the job hunt. So the hand hunter is is job hunting his job, right? So he needs to keep, or she needs to keep their jobs. So if I want, like, now to kind of wrap it up, and I'm really enjoying this discussion with you, final words from both of you, and I want you to focus more about encouraging fellow entrepreneurs and tech founders to go out and build long-lasting companies. I start with you, Garrett.
Well, as Philippe was talking, and we're sort of feeling out what AI can and cannot do, and what this process is that we're trying to describe. It occurred to me that it's in some way Buddhism, I think, captures it, right? Which is, you think that there's this straight line to accomplish something, or to build something, or to create something. It's not. That process is a journey, and you don't know what the stops are going to be along the way. The creation of any, if you read about the creation of any great product, um, it's generally people with certain sets of skills, but a lot of naivete of entering a market that they don't understand, and because they don't know that, they just go down this journey, and on the journey you learn how success will be built. And if you're not in that arena and you're not doing it, it cannot happen. And you cannot intellectualize your way to a result. You have to go down there. And so, whether you're a one person company or a 10-person company or not, what you're really doing is going down a mystery journey, where you learn certain things and draw some conclusions, and then you build things in response to that. And if you're honest in the journey and you do it right, then hopefully you end up with a solution that is valuable to people. And I think this is part of this authenticity thing. And whether your journey is to go and find your next job, or it's to build a company, finding that authenticity and being honest and open about it and going on that journey is how you get there. And so, and if you have AI, you'll get there hopefully a little bit faster, or with less, needing less resources. And if you're looking for a job and you're using Callings.ai, then you're getting AI tools to help you with that journey, but you still have to take the journey. And I guess the Buddhists say the journey is the reward. So when you look back, that's the adventurous part that you think about, is not the island that you end up on after you're a millionaire, but the journey to get there. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. Philippe, like, final maybe words from you.
Um, well, Garrett wandered in the Buddhism references. I feel like I have to jump on that. Believe there's a
Taoism, Confucianism. Where are you going to go, Philippe?
I think there's a saying that forget what you want and take what you get. I think we need to revisit this as it has to be both now. Is you have to be clear about what you want and also take what you get, which might not be what you want. But I don't think that today we can get anything if we don't want anything. So you need to have like a strong want and be open to all the gets and be listening beyond your initial want, which touches to the notion of maybe extreme agility or maybe it's fluidity. Definitely dead are the days of planning, or it's a continuum, so less and less planning, more and more fluidity, more and more intelligence, more and more a conversational flow, in building companies. Or even I remember in 2005, that's what now 20 years ago. 20 years ago, you could raise a Series A on the PowerPoint presentation, and that will buy you a team of 20 for 18 months. So 18 months later, you would go to market. Today, there's no way. Well, okay, there's no way. If you have built a personal brand for raising a lot of money, then today it's possible. But this is a handful of people. By the way, very smart people, no doubt about it. But if you are a normal entrepreneur, I put myself as part of regular entrepreneur, I have not developed a strong brand when it comes to being an entrepreneur that flip my fingers and get to raise the $20 billion that we see happening. If you're an entrepreneur, I would say that don't expect to raise a $6 million on the PowerPoint, first PowerPoint. No, certainly not. But you will need to navigate this fluid evolution of your ideas and get the validation from the market that is having users. And my take today, the modern take is you should focus on having a single user. It's counterintuitive, but you should focus on getting a single user. You cannot scale not having a single user. You cannot scale not having a single happy user. If you have a single user, unhappy single user, you're going to scale more unhappy users. So I would say keep it very fluid. Help one person, 2, 3 people max, and make sure they cannot live without what you're bringing to them. That's how I started with this recruiting group of people looking for, hunting for jobs. I started to be the first user, where I was the one happy because it was clearly helping me, myself. And then some other people saw it and asked me, can you share your spreadsheet? Can you do that? That became a second user, third user, happy users. Usable, absolutely not a usable product, but there was a value proposition. And progressively, once you have solid 1 or 2 100% happy users, move to the next one. Then we can go and ask for money. And we go first, ask to get a little bit more to validate if there's more than one user, that you can go to 100 or 1,000 users. So I would go very incremental and very focusing on the value proposition, on making sure that, and the confirmation is from other users. You should have the intention, should articulate, implement, and AI gives us this ability to be highly flexible and fluid and move from one aspect to another one, redesign the application, recreate the application, up until where you start to see real traction from one single user. Then go to the next one. And that can be done in 2 weeks, 3 weeks today. You don't need a year anymore. 1 week, 2 weeks, took me for the first implementation of the product. It was 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, I had the product. You could log in, you could have the first stuff. Yeah, that's what vibe coding gives you. But what vibe coding is not getting you is this adding value to a human being there that says yes, and I'm willing to pay you, and then raise the money.
Right. It's all about execution, Philippe, and I think you mentioned it also before. So yeah, we can. Uh, I believe this is one of the episodes that personally, was very insightful because a lot of wisdom both of you threw today. But I want to re-highlight one thing, Philippe, you mentioned is about um, like us as humans, we don't like to give control to anything, to anyone, right? And I think this is one of the uh, best things we have as humans because first, we're gonna still have the ambition to always challenge ourselves. And of course, we're gonna challenge the AI and the language models to keep doing something better, right? And I think the whole story of Callings.ai is how me, as someone who's looking for a job, whether you call it hunting or searching, it's up to you, how I can go and I do it in a better way, in a faster way, in a way which people can support me because I know like, it's not only about writing the best cover letters and CV, which you do it good, but also about, networking with people and finding the right decision makers. And I think this is where humans always gotta be forefront, not the machine. You Garrett, you say it also as you said it also as well. So it's a tool that we're gonna keep using it and enhance it until we reach, where we want to go. I love this, and I think I want to thank you both of you really because uh I have two, like as I said, veterans in tech and startups and entrepreneurship with me. So I was very lucky to have you both with you. I gotta do one thing. I think people can get in touch using LinkedIn, probably, right? If they want to follow you or how they can be in touch.
Yeah, so we're on LinkedIn. Our company is on LinkedIn. If you're interested in using Callings.ai, just go to Callings.ai/CTO. We'll create that URL for you, so your listeners can have access, and that'll give them a free month of the product. And so you can do that. You can reach out to me at Garrett, Garrett at Callings.ai. If you have questions or comments or sarcastic remarks, and we'd love to have you if you're in the market for your next role, we'd love to have you try us out. We're for anybody, including the people on this podcast, that first free month, but you can start the product for free, and many pieces of the product remain free. So especially for finding and saving and tracking jobs. So try it out, and yeah, definitely reach out to us on LinkedIn if you have any questions or comments.
Great. I think
And
Philippe wants to.
thank you for creating such a platform so
Oh,
entrepreneurs and the rest of us can reflect and share. So thank you again, Mehmet.
oh, my
Thanks
pleasure.
for having
So
us today. We really
oh,
appreciate it.
it's my pleasure. So for the audience, guys, you don't need to look around. So I'm gonna put the links that Garrett and Philippe mentioned. So everything you will find it in the show notes, and of course you can get in touch. And I'm very grateful because you're gonna create this, /CTO. So callings.ai/CTO. You will find in the show notes, so you can get the product to try it for 1 month. I want to thank you again. I know, like, I thanked you a lot today, but I'm grateful because I couldn't do what I'm trying to do. So I call myself a hobbyist who's trying to learn things around. I couldn't do it without you and without all the guests, of course, who came before. And I was very lucky to meet awesome people like you, Garrett and Philippe. And I'm gonna try to keep doing it, creating, as you mentioned, Garrett. The main reason why the CTO show exists is exactly to get the best out of the best for people to get inspired, right? So because my mission, I couldn't be a founder in the term of a startup founder. I always dreamt to be to be a founder. My aim is to get people inspired to go and try to do something, to learn about technology, because we know, we need to keep learning. And you both mentioned this a lot today about uplifting yourself to the next level. So thank you both for being here with me. This is for the audience. Guys, if you just discovered this podcast, thank you for passing by. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did so, give us a thumb up, share it with your friends and colleagues. And if you are one of the people who keep coming again and again, thank you very much. Guys, you are like making me really, really so proud of everything I do, because for the first time since I started this 2 years ago, so now the podcast, the CTO Show with Mehmet, is entering the top 200 Apple podcast chart in the entrepreneurship and sometimes in the business, multiple countries at the same time. I'm still hoping for some countries, so fingers crossed, but we've got countries in Europe, we've got countries in the Middle East here, we got countries in Southeast Asia, and even in Australia and New Zealand. So I'm hoping to see more flags very soon in my statistics. So thank you very much. And as I say always, stay tuned for a new episode very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.